Werewolf DNA. Bella Swan might carry werewolf genes in her ancestry. This theory attempts to explain her unique resistance to vampire mental powers throughout the saga. Edward Cullen cannot read her mind, Jane's pain-inducing ability has no effect on her, and even Aro, the ancient Volturi leader, finds her thoughts completely inaccessible. Werewolves in the Twilight universe are naturally immune to these vampiric mental abilities, which makes fans wonder if Bella inherited this protection from a distant werewolf ancestor. The theory gains additional support from Jacob Black's imprinting on Renesmee. There's no previous record in the saga of werewolves imprinting on vampires or half-vampires, leading supporters to argue that Jacob sensed the werewolf DNA Renesmee inherited from her mother. While Breaking Dawn reveals Bella possesses a shield power, this theory suggests her protection could stem from genetic heritage rather than pure vampire ability. The one inconsistency is that Jasper's emotion manipulation does work on Bella, which contradicts complete werewolf immunity. This theory remains possible because the films never explicitly confirm the source of Bella's shield, leaving room for a biological explanation that connects all three species in ways the story never explored. Succubus Theory. What if Bella is unknowingly a mythological creature who appears irresistibly attractive to everyone around her? This Reddit theory addresses one of the saga's biggest questions. The moment Bella arrives at Forks High School, multiple boys including Mike Newton, Eric, and Tyler become immediately interested in her, despite her describing herself as plain and average. In Midnight Sun, Edward reveals that every male student finds Bella attractive, and plots ways to talk to her. Her blood smells extraordinarily appealing to vampires, making her Edward's singer, a human whose blood calls to a specific vampire more than any other. Edward cannot read her mind, suggesting supernatural protection from mental intrusion. The theory proposes Bella unknowingly possesses succubus traits, which she then passed to her daughter Renesmee, explaining Jacob's intense attraction even before the child was born. While traditional succubus lore involves creatures who seduce men to their deaths, this interpretation focuses purely on the supernatural magnetism. This theory remains plausible because the saga never provides a concrete explanation for why Bella attracts such universal attention beyond Edward's vague descriptions of her appeal, leaving fans to wonder if there's something genuinely supernatural about her nature that even she doesn't recognize. Celtic Faeries. The Cullens might not be vampires at all, but creatures from Celtic mythology. Fans notice that Twilight vampires deviate dramatically from traditional vampire lore in almost every significant way. Sunlight makes their skin sparkle like diamonds instead of burning them. They show no fear of religious symbols like crosses or holy water. Each vampire possesses unique supernatural powers far beyond standard vampiric abilities. They can voluntarily drink animal blood and completely resist the urge for human blood. In Celtic and Scottish folklore, the Sidhe and Bovan Sidhe are fey creatures known for their extraordinary beauty and bloodlust. These Celtic fairies possess supernatural powers, live in forests and woods, and according to some legends, feed on human blood. The Cullens' woodland home in Forks and their impossibly beautiful appearances align more closely with fairy descriptions than vampire mythology. This theory suggests Stephenie Meyer created an entirely new species, but marketed them as vampires for broader appeal. The possibility remains open because the Twilight universe never explores vampire origins or explains why these creatures differ so drastically from every other vampire depiction in fiction. If they were fairies mistaken for vampires throughout history, it would explain every deviation from traditional vampire rules while maintaining internal consistency within the saga's unique mythology. Sunscreen Solution. The Cullen's sparkling problem might have the simplest possible solution. The family moved to Forks, Washington specifically because of the perpetually cloudy and rainy weather. Their skin sparkles brilliantly in direct sunlight, which would immediately reveal their vampire nature to humans and violate the Volturi's most sacred law. Fans theorized that regular sunscreen with UV protection would prevent the sparkling by blocking the sun's rays that cause the effect. The reason this solution doesn't work in the saga, according to the theory, is simply because the Cullens never actually tried it. This remains one of the most humorous theories in the fandom, but it's technically possible because the films never explicitly state that sunscreen wouldn't work. The saga never shows any vampire attempting modern solutions to their supernatural problems. While it seems almost too simple to be true, the theory persists because there's no canonical evidence proving sunscreen ineffective against vampire sparkling, asking it a permanent, unanswered question that fans enjoy speculating about as a lighthearted critique of the saga's world-building choices. Werewolf Origins. The first Twilight vampire might have been created by a werewolf bite gone catastrophically wrong. Reddit user Moonstar Raven developed this theory to explain the complete absence of vampire origin stories in Stephenie Meyer's universe. The theory proposes that a human was bitten by a werewolf, but instead of transforming into a werewolf, became a bloodthirsty creature during the full moon. This person contracted a mutated form of lycanthropy, where sharp teeth remained, but weren't quite animalistic fangs. The fur that should have grown was replaced by sparkling skin that protects against sunlight, rather than burns in it. This would explain why Twilight vampires differ so drastically from traditional vampire mythology, because they're actually a hybrid species born from werewolf infection, rather than pure vampirism. The theory remains plausible, because Meyer intentionally left vampire origins completely unexplored in the books and films. There's no canonical explanation for how the first vampire came to exist, when they appeared, or why they have their unique characteristics. This deliberate gap in the mythology leaves room for creative explanations like a werewolf-vampire connection that would also explain why the two species are natural enemies, suggesting they share a common but divergent origin. Blood aversion. Bella's unprecedented self-control as a newborn vampire might stem from her human weakness. When Bella transforms in Breaking Dawn Part 2 at age 18, she displays control that shocks her entire family. Newborn vampires are notoriously bloodthirsty and nearly impossible to restrain, yet Bella manages to turn away from a human's blood scent mid-hunt, something the Cullens describe as unprecedented. As a human, Bella had an extreme aversion to blood, unable to tolerate even the sight or smell of it without feeling faint. This theory argues that her human weakness became magnified during transformation into a vampiric strength. Her repulsion to blood carried over and grew powerful enough to significantly diminish her bloodlust. This mirrors how other vampires' human traits were enhanced. Carlisle Cullen maintained extraordinary control, while Jasper Hale struggled with bloodlust, suggesting their human personalities influenced their vampire natures. Bella's control allowed her to safely be near her daughter Renesmee immediately after transformation, when she should have been most dangerous. The theory remains possible, because the saga never explicitly explains why Bella has such unusual control for a newborn. While the films attribute it to her strength of will and preparation, they never rule out that her human blood aversion played a physiological role in her transformation, making this a gap fans reasonably filled with their own interpretation. Telepathic Bond. Bella and Edward might share an actual supernatural connection beyond metaphor. In New Moon, after Edward leaves Forks, Bella falls into severe depression and begins hearing his voice warning her of danger. In New Moon, Edward's voice instructs Bella to let an angry Jacob calm down before she even knew Jacob was a werewolf whose anger could trigger transformation. The voice appears to possess information Bella couldn't possibly have, leading fans to theorize they share a genuine telepathic bond manifested by their intense love. Stephenie Meyer explicitly dismissed this theory, stating the voice was simply Bella's psychological coping mechanism, and in New Moon, Bella realizes their love had spoken to her imagination. However, fans continue arguing the theory because the voice provided knowledge beyond Bella's awareness. Some theorists suggest Bella's shield power was weakened during her depression, allowing Edward to unconsciously project his worried thoughts to her. Edward's intense emotions about potentially losing Bella might have been strong enough to breach the normal barriers between their minds. This theory remains technically possible, despite Meyer's denial, because the author's explanation doesn't fully account for the specific warnings Bella received that proved accurate about situations she didn't understand. The gap between what Meyer intended and what the text appears to show leaves room for fans to maintain their interpretation of a literal magical connection. By the way, if you're enjoying this, I create content like this regularly. Subscribing would really help out. Parallel transformations. Bella's entire life before becoming a vampire might have been cosmically designed preparation. This elaborate theory argues that Bella experienced parallel versions of each Cullen family member's transformation story before joining them. Carlisle Cullen was turned after being bitten on the wrist by a vampire he was hunting. James bites Bella on the wrist in Twilight, in almost the exact same location. Edward contracted Spanish influenza and was dying when Carlisle transformed him. Bella's life-threatening pregnancy that nearly kills her mirrors Edward's deadly illness. Esme Cullen jumped off a cliff after losing her child and enduring a troubled marriage. Bella cliff dives in New Moon during her depression over losing Edward. Rosalie Hale was assaulted by a gang of men in Rochester before Carlisle found and transformed her. Bella is followed by threatening men in Port Angeles, but Edward saves her before the situation escalates. Emmett Cullen was being mauled by a black bear when Rosalie discovered him. Bella is nearly attacked by Paul as he transforms into his wolf form. Jasper Hale commanded a newborn vampire army in the Southern Vampire Wars. Bella helps train the Cullens to fight Victoria's newborn army in Eclipse. Alice Cullen was institutionalized and lost all memories of her human life during her transformation. Bella's transformation involved morphine that paralyzed her body while leaving her mind conscious but trapped. The theory proposes these aren't coincidences, but evidence that Bella was always destined to become a Cullen, with each experience preparing her emotionally to understand their trauma. This remains plausible because the films never address why Bella's life contained so many echoes of the Cullens' experiences. The pattern could be mere coincidence or genuine cosmic design, and the saga provides no definitive answer either way. Volturi Harvesting. The Volturi might actively identify and transform talented humans to strengthen their coven. This theory reframes the ancient vampires from mere law enforcers to strategic power collectors. Throughout the saga, Arrow shows intense interest in vampires with unique abilities. He repeatedly tries to recruit Alice Cullen for her precognition powers and invites Edward to join the Volturi in New Moon. When Arrow meets Bella, he displays unusual fascination with her shielded mind. If he truly cared only about vampire secrecy and following the law, he should have eliminated Bella immediately for knowing about vampires. Instead, he waits for her transformation, clearly interested in what powers she might develop. According to the Twilight Saga, the official illustrated guide, the Volturi historically recruited humans who showed potential for supernatural talents, transforming only those who displayed promise. The theory argues they maintain a systematic program of identifying gifted humans and strategically turning them to collect powerful abilities. This would explain why the Volturi Guard contains so many vampires with exceptional powers like Jane's pain induction and Alec's sensory deprivation. The theory remains possible because the films never fully explore the Volturi's recruitment methods or explain their exact criteria for choosing new members. Their actions throughout the saga consistently prioritize acquiring power over purely enforcing laws, suggesting ulterior motives that the story never definitively confirms or denies. Future Triangle. Renesmee Cullen might end up with someone other than Jacob Black. At the end of Breaking Dawn, Edward mentions that Jacob may face competition when Renesmee comes of age, directly hinting at future romantic complications. Nahuel, another human-vampire hybrid from South America, appears in the final film as proof that hybrids can survive. He's approximately 150 years old, but appears in his early 20s, having stopped aging at maturity. Fans theorize Nahuel and Renesmee will eventually fall in love as the only two compatible hybrid mates of their generation. They share unique biology and experiences that no one else, including Jacob, can fully understand. Jacob imprinted on Renesmee, which binds him to her, but he explicitly states that imprinting means becoming whatever the person needs, whether protector, friend, or lover. This leaves open the possibility that their connection might manifest as deep platonic bonding rather than romance. The theory proposes a repeat of the Eclipse love triangle pattern in the next generation, with Jacob potentially experiencing the same heartbreak he inflicted on others. This remains possible because the saga ends without confirming the nature of Jacob and Renesmee's future relationship. Edward's competition comment, and Jacob's own description of imprinting's flexibility, suggest the story intentionally left the romantic future ambiguous, allowing fans to speculate about whether imprinting guarantees romance or could evolve into other forms of connection. Edward's hesitation. Edward Cullen might have feared eternal commitment more than he admitted. Throughout the saga, Edward consistently delays Bella's transformation despite her repeated requests. He claims this hesitation stems from wanting to preserve her humanity and soul, but his actions suggest deeper doubts. In Twilight, James bites Bella, and Edward could have let the venom transform her, but he frantically removes it instead. After their marriage in Breaking Dawn, they spend weeks on Isle Esme without Edward ever discussing her transformation, even though it would be the perfect isolated location. When Bella becomes pregnant with Renesmee, Edward still doesn't consider transforming her until she's literally dying during childbirth. He waits until the absolute last possible moment, then injects venom directly into her heart with a syringe, rather than biting her. The theory suggests Edward may have subconsciously worried about being bound to Bella for eternity, questioning whether his love would last forever, despite his conscious declarations. Vampires in the saga mate for life, with no possibility of separation, making the decision truly permanent. This theory remains possible because the films never fully explore Edward's psychological reasons for his constant delays. While he voices noble intentions about protecting Bella's soul, his pattern of finding reasons to postpone her transformation, right up until death forces his hand, suggests conflicting emotions he may not have consciously acknowledged or been willing to admit. Renesmee's transformation. Renesmee Cullen might have been the one who actually turned Bella into a vampire, not Edward. This theory emerged from fans analyzing the birth scene in Breaking Dawn Part 1 very carefully. During Bella's traumatic delivery, the chaos of the moment leaves questions about exactly what happened. Edward then injects his venom directly into Bella's heart and bites her multiple times, but the theory proposes Renesmee's bite may have already begun the transformation process. Hybrid children in the saga possess venomous bites from birth, as confirmed by Nahuel's backstory about accidentally killing his own mother during delivery. The film never explicitly shows or confirms who delivered the transformative bite. focusing instead on Edward's frantic efforts to save Bella. This theory remains technically possible because the chaos of the scene leaves room for interpretation about the exact sequence of events. If Renesmee did bite her mother, it would add profound emotional significance to Bella's transformation, meaning her daughter gave her the gift of immortality rather than it being solely Edward's doing. The films neither confirm nor deny this specific detail, making it an unresolved question that fans can reasonably debate based on careful observation of the scene. Alice's vision. Alice Cullen's ability to see Renesmee and the werewolves in Breaking Dawn Part 2 contradicts established rules about her power. Throughout the entire saga, Alice explicitly cannot see werewolves, or anything connected to them because she's never been a werewolf herself. Her visions work based on species she's experienced, which is why she sees vampires clearly, but humans only somewhat hazily. Renesmee is half human and half vampire, which should already limit Alice's sight, but she's also deeply connected to Jacob through his imprinting. The theory proposes that the imprinting bond between Jacob and Renesmee somehow created a bridge that allows Alice to see their shared future. This unprecedented connection between a werewolf and a hybrid might have fundamentally altered the metaphysical rules governing Alice's visions. When Alice shares her vision with Edward at the film's end, they see a fully grown Renesmee standing with her parents and Jacob together, suggesting she can now perceive Jacob's future when it's intertwined with Renesmee's. The theory argues that the powerful supernatural bond of imprinting, which transcends normal relationships in the saga, was strong enough to stop the ancient feud between vampires and werewolves and allow Alice's previously impossible vision. This remains plausible because the films never explain how Alice suddenly gained this ability, or acknowledge that it contradicts her previously established limitations. The saga ends without addressing this apparent plot inconsistency, leaving fans to theorize about whether imprinting genuinely altered the fundamental rules of precognitive vampire powers. If you found this interesting, subscribe so you never miss new content. Thanks for watching.